There are battles you prepare for, and then there are battles you never see coming, because the enemy is not outside your gates, but seated at your table. Some of the deepest wounds are not inflicted by strangers, but by those who know your history, your fears, your dreams, and your soft places. When the enemy lives close, the danger is not loud or obvious. It is quiet, familiar, and disguised as love, concern, or loyalty. This is why discernment is not optional. It is survival. Many people fall not because they are weak, but because they trust without seeing, love without boundaries, and ignore the warning whispers in their spirit. The enemy that lives close rarely announces itself. It does not arrive with hatred on its face, but with smiles, shared memories, and blood ties. In families and relationships, this kind of opposition hides behind titles: brother, sister, parent, partner, friend. It studies you closely, learns your rhythms, and waits patiently for moments of vulnerability. What makes this enemy so dangerous is proximity, because closeness grants access, and access grants influence. Discernment begins when you understand that not everyone close to you is for you, even if they share your name or your past. One of the hardest truths to accept is that love does not cancel discernment. You can love someone deeply and still recognize that their presence weakens you, confuses you, or pulls you away from peace. The enemy that lives close often drains you emotionally, spiritually, or mentally, yet leaves you questioning yourself instead of them. You feel heavy after interactions, second-guess your progress, or sense subtle resistance whenever you grow. These are not coincidences. They are signals. Discernment is learning to trust what your spirit feels even when your heart wants to deny it. In families, this battle becomes even more complex. Loyalty is weaponized, and silence is demanded in the name of unity. You are told to endure disrespect because family is family, or to ignore manipulation because they mean well. But discernment teaches you that unity without truth is bondage, not peace. When the enemy lives close, they often resent your growth, mock your boundaries, or subtly sabotage your healing, because your freedom exposes their dysfunction. The resistance you face is not always about you. Sometimes it is about what your becoming represents. This is where awareness must awaken. You are not imagining the tension. You're not overreacting to the discomfort. Your spirit is responding to something your eyes have not fully named yet. Discernment begins with permission, the permission to observe without guilt, to question without fear, and to protect your peace without apology. As you continue, you will begin to see the patterns, the signs, and the quiet strategies used when the enemy lives close. Stay attentive, because clarity is coming. And once you see, you will never unsee. One of the clearest signs that the enemy lives close is confusion that follows connection. You enter conversations clear-minded and hopeful, yet leave them doubting yourself, your decisions, or your worth. Nothing overtly cruel is said, yet something feels off, like a slow erosion of confidence. This is not accidental. Subtle opposition works by planting questions rather than delivering attacks. Discernment teaches you to notice patterns, not isolated moments. When confusion becomes consistent, it is no longer internal weakness. It is external influence. Another quiet indicator is selective support. When things are going wrong, certain people appear attentive, concerned, even involved. But when progress begins, when doors open, confidence rises, or healing starts, their presence fades, or their tone shifts. Celebration becomes silence. Encouragement turns into caution. Discernment recognizes that genuine love does not feel threatened by your growth. When someone only feels comfortable around your pain, but uncomfortable around your progress, you're witnessing resistance, not care. The enemy that lives close often disguises control as concern. They ask questions that feel intrusive, frame opinions as advice, and express worry that subtly discourages bold steps. Over time, you may notice that your choices begin to shrink around their comfort. You explain yourself more. You hesitate longer. You dilute your truth to avoid friction. Discernment reveals this for what it is: a slow narrowing of your life. True concern empowers. Hidden opposition restrains. In family dynamics, this resistance is often normalized. Generational patterns are defended. Unhealthy behaviors are excused. and growth is seen as rebellion. When you challenge what has always been, you may be labeled difficult, distant, or ungrateful. Discernment allows you to see beyond the label to the fear beneath it. Your evolution threatens systems that rely on stagnation. The discomfort you cause is not wrongdoing, it is disruption, and disruption is necessary for healing. Another subtle sign is emotional imbalance. You find yourself carrying more emotional weight than others, constantly accommodating moods, smoothing conflicts, or absorbing negativity. The enemy that lives close benefits when you are exhausted, because exhaustion dulls discernment. When you are tired, you second-guess intuition and tolerate what you would normally resist. Awareness begins when you ask why peace feels like work around certain people, while it feels natural elsewhere. Discernment sharpens when you stop explaining away what consistently harms you. You are not required to understand someone's intentions to acknowledge their impact. The signs are not meant to accuse, they are meant to awaken. As you continue listening, you will begin to separate love from loyalty, concern from control, and familiarity from safety. Stay present, because the closer the enemy is, the more essential your clarity becomes. When you see clearly, you regain power. When the enemy lives close, manipulation rarely looks aggressive. It looks emotional. It arrives wrapped in affection, shared history, and phrases that sound caring but feel heavy. I just want what's best for you. After all I've done for you, or you're changing, become tools rather than truths. Discernment begins when you recognize that love does not demand guilt as proof of loyalty. Any relationship that requires you to shrink, submit, or suffer silently to maintain peace is not rooted in love, but in control. Emotional manipulation thrives on obligation. In families especially, it leans on sacrifice stories and unspoken debts. You are reminded of everything that was done for you, not to inspire gratitude, but to enforce compliance. Over time, you may feel responsible for their happiness, their moods, and their stability. Discernment teaches you that responsibility and compassion are not the same. You can care deeply without carrying what was never yours to hold. Another common tactic is the shifting of blame. When conflict arises, the enemy that lives close subtly reframes reality so that you become the problem. Your boundaries are called disrespect. Your honesty is labeled harshness. Your silence is interpreted as attitude. Discernment exposes this pattern not by arguing, but by observing consistency. When accountability never lands on them, but always circles back to you, manipulation is at work. In romantic and close personal relationships, this dynamic can become even more entangling. Affection is given and withdrawn strategically, creating emotional instability that keeps you seeking approval. You may notice cycles of closeness, followed by coldness, clarity, followed by confusion. Discernment helps you understand that love is steady, not destabilizing. Anything that trains you to fear loss more than dishonesty is quietly enslaving you. The enemy that lives close often resists direct confrontation, preferring indirect pressure. They may speak about you instead of to you, involve others, or create narratives that isolate you. This tactic works because it undermines your confidence and credibility simultaneously. Discernment teaches you to trust your lived experience over borrowed opinions. When multiple voices repeat the same distortion, it does not make it truth. It reveals coordination. Awareness deepens when you stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. Manipulation feels intense because it hooks into your emotions, but it does not nourish your spirit. You are not cold for stepping back, and you are not cruel for choosing clarity over chaos. As you move forward, you will learn how discernment protects without hardening your heart. Stay with this message, because understanding manipulation is the first step toward freedom when the enemy lives close. Many people resist discernment because they fear it will turn them into someone cold, suspicious, or divided from those they love. But discernment is not about accusation. It is about preservation. When the enemy lives close, discernment becomes a survival skill, not a judgment. It allows you to see clearly without becoming bitter, to create distance without hatred, and to protect your spirit without destroying your compassion. The goal is not to expose others, but to stop bleeding in places where no healing is offered. One of the most liberating realizations is understanding that discernment does not require confrontation. You do not have to announce what you see for it to be valid. In many cases, speaking too early only invites denial, deflection, or escalation. Discernment often works best in silence, through observation, adjustment, and quiet withdrawal. When the enemy lives close, your wisdom is revealed not in what you say, but in what you no longer allow. In families, choosing discernment can feel like betrayal because unhealthy systems depend on participation. When you stop reacting, stop explaining, or stop absorbing emotional chaos, the imbalance becomes visible. You may be accused of changing, distancing yourself, or becoming too sensitive. Discernment teaches you that resistance often intensifies when control weakens. The discomfort others feel is not proof that you are wrong. It is evidence that a boundary has been set. Discernment also sharpens your awareness of timing. You begin to sense when to speak and when to remain silent, when to engage and when to step back. Not every truth must be spoken to every person. When the enemy lives close, selective silence can be protection, not fear. Wisdom understands that clarity without safety can become vulnerability. Discernment chooses peace over proving a point. Another critical aspect of discernment is recognizing emotional hooks. These are the predictable triggers: guilt, fear, pity, obligation, that pull you back into unhealthy dynamics. Once you see them, they lose their power. You no longer react automatically. You respond intentionally. Discernment gives you space between stimulus and response, and in that space, freedom grows. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming aware. You are not abandoning love. You are redefining it. Discernment does not harden the heart. It strengthens the spirit. As we continue, you will learn how to maintain connection without compromise and compassion without self-betrayal. Stay present, because the next stage reveals how to remain strong even when separation is not immediately possible. There are situations where the enemy lives close and distance is not immediately possible. Family ties, shared responsibilities, cultural expectations, or living arrangements may require continued interaction. In these moments, discernment shifts from separation to strategy. Wisdom teaches you how to be present without being exposed, how to engage without revealing your inner world, and how to protect your spirit while remaining physically available. Survival here is not about escape. It is about containment. One of the first adjustments discernment brings is emotional privacy. You stop sharing everything. You no longer reveal dreams, plans, fears, or struggles to those who have proven they cannot steward that information well. This is not secrecy. It is stewardship. When the enemy lives close, information becomes currency. Discernment teaches you that access must be earned, not assumed, no matter the relationship. You also begin to change how you respond. Instead of defending yourself, you become neutral. Instead of explaining, you simplify. Instead of reacting emotionally, you remain composed. This shift often unsettles those who relied on your reactions to feel powerful or relevant. Discernment understands that calm is not weakness. It is control reclaimed. When you no longer feed, the dynamic begins to starve. Another key strategy is energy management. You become intentional about how long interactions last and how deeply you engage. You recognize that constant exposure drains clarity and dulls intuition. Discernment gives you permission to step away mentally, even when you cannot step away physically. You rest your spirit elsewhere, in silence, reflection, or spaces that restore rather than deplete. Discernment also teaches you to watch behavior more than words. Promises may sound sincere. Apologies may appear heartfelt. But patterns reveal truth. When the enemy lives close, consistency is your compass. You no longer argue over intentions. You observe outcomes. This shift protects you from emotional loops and false hope that keep you stuck. Living wisely in close quarters requires inner strength, not outward force. You are not required to fight every battle to win the war. Discernment is teaching you patience, restraint, and precision. As you move forward, you will learn how this wisdom not only protects you, but prepares you for a season where clarity leads to peace, and peace leads to freedom. When discernment is ignored, the cost is rarely immediate. It accumulates quietly. The enemy that lives close does not need to destroy you all at once. It only needs to keep you confused long enough to drain your strength. Over time, you may notice your peace fading, your confidence weakening, and your sense of direction blurring. This erosion is subtle, but it is deliberate. Discernment is not fear. It is foresight meant to prevent slow spiritual exhaustion. Ignoring discernment often leads to self-betrayal. You override your intuition to maintain harmony, silence your truth to avoid conflict, and accept discomfort as normal. Eventually, you become disconnected from yourself. The enemy that lives close benefits when you no longer trust your inner voice, because a silent spirit is easier to influence. Discernment restores alignment between what you feel, what you know, and what you choose. There is also a spiritual heaviness that settles in when unhealthy proximity remains unchallenged. You may feel uninspired, unmotivated, or distant from clarity and purpose. This is not laziness or weakness. It is the weight of carrying what you were never meant to carry. Discernment reveals that peace is not found in endurance alone, but in wisdom applied consistently. Another cost of ignoring discernment is misplaced compassion. You give grace where boundaries are needed and patience where change is required. Over time, this imbalance breeds resentment, not because you are unkind, but because your kindness is being misused. Discernment teaches that compassion without wisdom becomes self-neglect. Love must be balanced with truth to remain healthy. The enemy that lives close thrives when you doubt yourself more than you doubt the situation. When you continuously question your perception, you surrender authority over your own experience. Discernment restores that authority gently, reminding you that awareness is not cruelty and self-protection is not selfishness. Clarity does not destroy relationships. It reveals which ones are sustainable. You were never meant to live in constant tension or quiet unease. Discernment is the inner signal guiding you back to alignment and peace. As clarity deepens, confusion loosens its grip, and wisdom prepares you for healthier connections ahead.